Fantastic. Well, thank you to Rachel and Steve. Really appreciate you guys. And welcome to everyone that's watching this live or even recorded. If this is your first time, welcome. Auntie Lily, just great to have you here. Dave Pearce in Adelaide, fantastic. Now, I actually belong to a number of Facebook hunting groups, and they're based around hunting dogs. And when the coronavirus first started to kick in and the shutdown came, one of the guys that was sort of admin in one of those groups started up a new group. And the new group is called How to Survive an Apocalypse. And I was invited into this group. Now, the whole group is based around grabbing funny little videos or whys or sometimes rude things that they put that have been posted on YouTube or somewhere and putting them up on this Facebook site. Now, one of the things that I quite liked is what I'm going to show you now. And it comes up with a caption, and the caption reads, my new social distancing outfit just arrived from Amazon. Now, I'm thinking this might really take off. Jeff, I know that you are always looking for new products to put into your Amazon line into America. Just an idea, mate, just an idea. What I find interesting, though, is how we use humour as human beings to deal with the unknown, things that cause fear, that cause worry, that we can't explain. And even the name, How to Survive an Apocalypse, is a deeper expression of something that's going on in the psyche of our world at the moment. Now, if we were to go back 3,000 years to the nation of Israel, you would find that they had a king called David. Now, he was very different to, say, Prince Charles, who was born to royalty. David was not born into royalty. In fact, there was a time in his life where he was on Israel's most wanted. He was hunted down, he lived in caves, and he gathered this group of really rough, tough men that were wild, and they hung around him, and they became known as David's mighty men. In fact, there's a list of them. There's about 30 of them. They're named, and even the things that they did, we actually get to see what they did all those years ago. Now, when David moved from the cave of Adullam to Jerusalem to become king, by then his leadership gift had not just gathered 30 men, but now he had a massive army of 340,000 soldiers, and they were gifted and they were skilled. They could fight with the left and right hand. There were men that had the latest technology, and this massive army of 340,000 people is listed, and where they came from, the tribes they came from, 18,000 from one tribe, 40,000 from another. But sort of just sliced and spliced into this massive list of army, there's a little tiny group of 200 men, and they are singled out. And they're singled out for one purpose, one gifting they had that was different to everyone else. This 200 men weren't soldiers. They weren't skilled at killing people. This was their gift. Two things they could do. They understood the times, and they knew what to do for what Israel should do. They understood what was going on in their world, and not only did they know what they could do, but they knew what was needed for their nation to do in response to that. A very wise and learned man called Dave Sharman recently said something to me. And this is a quote from Dave. And he said to me, back then people lived at walking pace. And that little quote really sort of echoed in my head, because I thought, we live at such a different pace today. In 2020, we're living at a pace that exceeds the speed limit. Like, some of you should be booked for what you try to jam into 1 week. And if there was ever a moment in history when understanding the times and knowing what to do, if it was ever needed, it's actually now. Now, you can have a talk to old mate Google, and you can ask old mate questions, and he'll give you a whole lot of information. You can go onto YouTube and you'll find a zillion billion different comments or information or opinions, And everyone thinks they're right, and everyone's trying to convince you their truth is reality. And they know the backstory behind everything, and they're interpreting everything. Now, the other day, my little grandson said to me, "Granddad, there are people that exaggerate. They exaggerate by millions." And I sort of laughed, and I don't think he knew why I was laughing, but he was exaggerating about how people exaggerate. And I might have been exaggerating about the zillions of billions, but there is a lot of stuff out there, and some of it causes fear and confusion, and people believe what they are hearing and seeing through someone's interpretation of what's going on in our world. So today, we're starting a new series on understanding the times and the seasons in our life. Imagine if you could really know what's going on, really understand, not just right now, but tomorrow into the future. And if you could also apply that, if you could take that and know how to respond and know what to do. Wisdom is more than just knowing about information. It's more than just knowledge. It's actually knowing what to do with what we know. Now, James was the brother of Jesus, and he began life as a skeptic. But an event called the resurrection changed James's life forever. And in fact, James wrote something that is a help to us. And this is what James wrote. He said, "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. It's not complicated." Now, when the boys asked Jesus about the future, they said to him, Can you tell us what signs there are about when you would come back? How would we know when our world is changing and you're going to come back? And they asked him about global warming and the end of our age and what's going to happen to this earth. And when they asked him these questions, Jesus didn't say to them, "You can't ask me that." Jesus didn't say, "I'm not telling. I know something you don't know." What Jesus did was he answered in detail. And in Matthew chapter 24, it takes up the whole chapter, but Jesus explains in detail what's coming in the future. And he wants us to know things. Has this planet got an expiry date? Like, could Jesus return to this world in the next 5 years? 10 years, like in your lifetime, in your kids' life, there are things that we can know and God wants us to know. And we're living in a moment in time that's completely, it's never happened before. Never in the history of this world has a pandemic affected the whole earth at one time. The financial consequences that are affecting our whole globe, it's never happened before. But more than that, just think about this for a moment. Every church across this world has been shut down. Christians are no longer gathering like they have for 2,000 years. Even the threat of being fed to the lions couldn't do that to the early church. And we are right now in this moment. In fact, we're doing this live streaming because we can't meet as we've been meeting. It's a unique moment in time. But understanding this and the big picture is also important that we actually understand the small picture of how we fit into all that and the times and the seasons in our life and how it affects us as an individual. If you're a 13 or 14-year-old boy and you know these things, that they're sort of like boy-like figures, and they're called girls. And you're aware of these things called girls, and then they start to change shape. And one of these shape-changed creatures starts giving you some attention. And you're 13 years old, and suddenly you go from nothing to deeply in love in 3 seconds. And already in your mind, you're married and you're with this person forever. And we know as adults that 3 weeks later, what's going to happen. And when that young boy is dumped, his life is shipwrecked. He doesn't know that this is just a season. It's a time. And that kid desperately needs a parent to help them understand the times and the seasons that they're going through. Because, see, rejection is something that we were never created for. I can sort of scratch my hand and it'll just heal all by itself. But we were never made to be rejected. And when our heart gets broken, there's a damage that takes place that's internal, and it has lasting sometimes consequences. Not every 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 15 survives that season of their life. Now, Coral had the privilege of me being her first boyfriend. She'd never had another boyfriend, and I'm her first boyfriend, so she's never known rejection. And I was 17, she was 16 when we first met, but I could relate more to the 13-year-old boy because I'd been dumped I don't know how many times by the time Coral and I came together. And at the mature age of 17, and Coral was 16, I asked her to marry me. Now, the next 3.5 years was really traumatic, and we broke up, and it was a roller coaster, and the problem was that as I kept asking her to marry me, and she wouldn't give an answer, I'd feel rejected, and I was super sensitive, and I'd react in really bad ways that didn't help my outcome. Because I hadn't known the season as a 13-year-old what to do with it. And my brokenness from back just as a kid was affecting that moment in our lives. Now, what applies to a 13-year-old boy or a 16-year-old girl? Also, it still works, that principle works for adults. And if you're single and you don't want to be, understanding the season you're in, the time you're in, and knowing what to do is probably one of the greatest gifts that you can give yourself and the person that God has for you. Understanding those seasons. Before marriage and after marriage is a season. It's very different. They're different times. And my sister Rosalie, when she was 26 years of age, she left Australia and went to southern Thailand as a missionary to work with poor people in this Thai village that didn't speak English. And for the next 12 years of her life, she sowed into that community, into that nation. She would have loved to have been married at 26. She would have loved to have been raising children when she's 30 and 32. But she knew there was a season that God had for her to serve in the area that she did. At 38 years of age, she came back to Australia, and she took up the role of leading 3 churches in Melbourne. How do you find, at 38 years of age, a really good man that's not got a whole lot of baggage that he's carrying? And how do you find that person that she longed to meet? Well, in one of the churches she was leading, on the leadership team of the church council, was a guy called John. And John is just one of those genuine, nice guys. And when Rosalie met him, I think John was 54, she was 38. John had never married, he'd lived at home with his mum, and then in her latter years he nursed her and looked after her and cared for her. And now she's gone. And Rosalie and John met. And it was a God setup. God put this together. And they were married. Rosalie was 40, John was 56 when they got married. And 18 months into their marriage, into this circle of love that God's put together, they brought this little 7-year-old girl, Leela. And Leela needed a family that was safe and would love her. And so throughout Leela's life, John and Rosalie have loved and cared for her. Leela's 26 now. And I can remember standing beside Leela when she was a 16-year-old girl, at Hillsong Conference. She was there for the first time. And God started to touch her heart and show her how real he was. And her life's journey, we've been part of it. John has been such a blessing to us as a family, to Mum and Dad. They love John. They've loved Leela. Leela is my niece, and she's a gift to this world. And John and Rosalie, their love for Leela has been a God setup. He put them all together. And to see, the thing is that God did that. And God also, back in the garden, created Adam. And God, not Adam, but God said to Adam, he said these words. He said, it's not good for man to be alone. I'll make a helper suitable for him. And into this perfect world that God created, into this perfect world where God and Adam could relate beautifully because there was no sin, there was no brokenness. Into this perfect world, God says, everything I made is good, but something's wrong. Something's missing. And see, the urge to merge is a God idea. We are created as relational beings. And the deepest longings of the human heart can only be found through God. Don't misunderstand what I just said. I didn't say they could be found in God. I said they could be found through God. Because see, God didn't say to Adam, get over it, mate. You're just going to be alone. Aren't you satisfied with everything I've got around you? Like, you can go fishing, you can go hunting, you can go play golf. There's no coronavirus. Just accept all the good things you've got, mate. Don't feel alone. But it was God that declared something was wrong. And it was through him that God created a woman to provide for him. And if you think that all you need is God, there is no verse in the Bible that says that. But God does say that all we need is him to provide all the things we need. So this amazing woman turns up for Adam. If you have been married, if you've been in a relationship, and you're now single, and you feel that's okay, that's what I'm going to be for the rest of my life, then understanding that season, understanding what to do and how to respond is really critical. Knowing the place that a church family fits into your world is so important. Relying on your own understanding and your own wisdom is not enough. Adam, he knew something was not quite right in his life, but he didn't know what. He didn't know what a woman was. There was no cave drawings with pictures for him to ever imagine what a woman could look like. And he's happy with everything he has, but he still knows something's not there. And he couldn't, in his wildest imagination, understand what God was going to do. But God put him into this deep sleep and created a woman. And when Adam woke up, there was a very naked woman standing right beside him. And that's the moment that Adam goes, whoa, man. And that's where we get the word woman from, right? I know. I'm sorry, people's right. But Eve was God's provision. And it was about family. And we sometimes think we don't need what God knows we need. We need each other. We need a church family. We need to be relationally connected into a community of Christians that can nourish and help us in the deepest and sometimes lonely moments in life. And if you're a parent, understand the seasons that your kids are going through is critical for you to be able to help them. Understanding your changing role as they get older, that's so important. And if your marriage is struggling, and it's like you just keep going around the same mountain, it's like there are moments when things explode and blow up, and you think, we're never going to make it, and then somehow it settles down to this sort of normality, but you're really not satisfied. There's a season that you're stuck in. That's not God's best for you. there is help. There is ways to move through that season into greater fruitfulness for you, for your whole family. And in Psalm 68, God says this. He says this. He sets the prisoners free. That's the people that feel trapped. People that feel they are stuck in this season of life and there's no way out. And God says he sets you free. And then he goes on to say he gives them joy. He gives you joy. And the joy comes through a change of season. And in that same verse that God is showing his heart to us, he begins it by saying this. He places the lonely in families, physical families, spiritual families. And right now, you're in a time in your life where you can't go back. You may feel stuck, but staying there is not an option. Going forward is the only way to bring change into a new season. And the only way you're going to get there is a God strategy. Peter, one of Jesus' disciples, had a problem. He had no money to pay the temple tax. And Jesus was with him too. Jesus didn't have enough money. So Jesus said to a fisherman, go fishing. He said, just go down on the Mitchell River, catch yourself a little bream, and when you bring that bream up, don't clean and gut the thing, look in its mouth. And in the mouth of this fish, you'll find enough money to pay the temple tax, which is what Peter did. That's a unique strategy. It's never been done before or since that I know of. And for every unique situation you have, God has a way forward. He has something that you can do, and he wants to show you that. You might feel trapped. You might even be feeling underneath angry and frustrated and easily irritable, and you can't even know why. But God's the master of helping us understand the seasons and the times we're in. And he will show you what to do. He will give you an answer. He will give you a strategy. It just begins by asking. And in Proverbs chapter 3, which I really encourage you to grab a Bible this week and open it up and read it. There's gold in these words. And this is what chapter 3 in Proverbs says, a little part of it. In verse 5 it begins, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend upon your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you which path to take. He'll give you a strategy. He'll show you what to do. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. We can all rely on our own wisdom, can't we? But God's saying don't get impressed with that. And he says, then you will have healing for your body and strength for your bones. What happens emotionally and mentally to us, spiritually, affects our bodies. And there's healing when we don't rely on our stuff and we go to him. Let's pray. God, I thank you that you have answers that go way beyond our capacity to imagine or see. And I thank you that the times and the seasons are in. You want to show us what's going on and you want to show us what to do. And I thank you for that. As Redgum, as a church, we're not a building, we're people. And we're going through a season right now that's brand new. We've never been down this road before. And we're learning new skills. We are doing the live streaming. We've had to buy a whole lot of new expensive equipment. I am amazed at the generosity of you as individuals, of people. The way you've been contributing, giving is just incredible. We even had a church this week ring up. I didn't even know the guy, and he rang up and he said, how can we get some money into the fire-affected people? We want to do it through Redgum. So they've sent some money this week to us. There's another church in Melbourne that is sending us $2,000. Right now, we've formed a team and they are working into the fire-affected area. And most churches will form committees to raise money. We've actually formed a team to spend money. And so in this season of Redgum, I can see people growing. There's health coming. There's a generosity, and you're part of that. And I just want to say a big thank you for all those that are making happen what's happening. Thank you. So, guys, might hand it back over to you.